car crashes, defective products, dangerous drugs, injuries, and abuse. Across the state of Alabama, the attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis, Wright, are here to serve you. Your tough legal questions answered by our experts with the attorneys of Hollis, Wright.
Hello and welcome to the attorneys. So glad to have you with us. I'm Art Franklin, and we've got a really good show lined up for you. And they're all good shows, but this one is especially good as we get into everything criminal law 101 from A to Z, everything in between. And we want to get right to that because there's so much to jump into. Josh Wright, of course, is our managing partner at Hollis Wright, and we've got a very special guest with us this morning, Ansley Bennett. Thank you so much for being with us.
Love to be here.
And welcome. So tell us a little bit about what we're going to be talking about today, because obviously you've been on the show before, talking a little bit about criminal law and some of the changes in the law. Tell us a little bit about the topic.
So today we're going to be talking about everything criminal law, but since I've been here about 3 years ago, of course the law is always changing, so there's been several updates made in different areas of the law, so we're going to get into some of that today.
Speaking of updates, you have gone out on your own since the last time. You're now at Bennett Law, kind of running your own thing, doing primarily criminal law, correct?
Yes, I'm now on my own and doing almost entirely criminal law.
Okay. How did you get into this area of the law? Because it is unique. Not everybody comes out of law school and says, hey, I want to go do criminal law. How did you kind of get involved in this area?
You know, it is, and I think I'm the only person in my graduating class from Georgia Law that does criminal. It just always interested me. I love doing it, and then I got really lucky. My first job was with a phenomenal criminal defense attorney in town, and I learned a lot from him, and he showed me the ropes, and I've just never been able to leave it.
Well, and we get this question a lot when we have these shows, which is, you know, when is the right time to hire a criminal defense lawyer to protect me? Because a lot of people think to themselves, well, I don't know if I can afford a criminal defense lawyer. You almost can't afford not to have a criminal defense lawyer.
That is correct. People often want to wait until they're charged, and that is just not the right way to go about it. An attorney can help you even from the investigation stage. If you get an attorney in there early, even in the past couple weeks, I've had cases where I was able to go to the screening department at the DA's office before the charges are actually put in the system. The cops have brought them to the DA's office, but they're not in the court system yet. And I can present my client's side of the story to the DA's office and to the police. In other cases, that wouldn't happen. They just have the victim side of the story, or, you know, what they might have observed. So getting in there early to be able to provide that different perspective can help them from pressing charges in the first place.
And there's one thing about this, when Ansley and I were talking about this, she's so excited about criminal law, watches all of the stories on the cases on television. Is there a case, when you think back over your careers, because I know this is something that you really are passionate about, that really stands out, that makes it exciting for you as a criminal lawyer?
The cases that I get really excited about are the cases where I believe that people are kind of railroaded by the system. And, you know, whether the person committed the crime or not, they're entitled to a defense. And people that aren't involved in the criminal justice system often don't know their way around it. They don't know what these legal words mean, and they really need someone to advocate for them. And there's been several cases where, you know, that was the case. Several big cases where someone may have been defending themselves, and they just need someone to share their side of the story.
Mm-hmm. I'll give you a good example. Take a hypothetical with me. Let's say that you have 3 teenage drivers, and let's say that one of them unfortunately gets in an accident or gets a ticket. And you think to yourself, well, I'm just going to manage that on my own with the district attorney's office and try and get to defensive driving school. And some counties are a little different than other counties. If you end up with a ticket on that record, all of a sudden the insurance of that family may go up $1,500, $2,000 a year, yet you probably could have hired someone for significantly less and saved money to do that. I mean, fair point?
Absolutely correct. And traffic tickets are one of the things where people think that they don't need to hire an attorney. I promise you it will save you time and money to just go ahead and get an attorney in there to handle it for you.
And to that end, Josh, if I can jump in and walk us through that then, the case from arrest to trial. What's involved?
Absolutely. So a lot of times someone may know that there's an arrest coming beforehand. Say you got in a fight with someone, the other person's going to go swear out a warrant. So you might be aware that there's a warrant out there. So in that case, you might turn yourself in or you might be arrested. When you're arrested, you're given bond. It can either be a good bond where you can have a bail bondsman help you out. You usually pay 10%. You don't get that money back, or you can pay cash bond where that money will go towards fees and fines later, or you can get it back. Once you have bonded out, you have your first appearance. It would be in district court, the lower level court, or in a municipal or city court. And from there, it's really a negotiating process with your defense attorney and the prosecutor. It doesn't necessarily go straight to a trial. You have some time to try to resolve it. You may have some pretrial motions to suppress evidence. And then eventually, it may get to that trial. Now, it's very rare for cases to go to trial across the board in any type of law, but especially in criminal law. But if you get to that point, the defense has the chance to present their opening and closing statement. The state presents their opening and closing statement. You can present your witnesses, they present their witnesses, and either you're going to be found guilty or not guilty. And then there's the sentencing phase. That might occur the same day that the trial ends. It could occur months later. And from there, you can file an appeal for your case if you are convicted. And the appeals process can go on and on and on.
You're kind of really highlighting the importance of why you want a lawyer to get involved in these cases, because that process, although you can just whip it off like that, is a complicated process for somebody to walk through if they're going to try and do this on their own. That gets further complicated when someone has a felony arrest versus a misdemeanor. Fair?
That is correct.
Let's back up just a little bit and talk just a little bit about the difference between those two and the importance of understanding what you're being charged with.
Right. So a misdemeanor is going to be your lower level criminal offenses. You can serve up to a year with those, and then there's some statutory fines that come along with that. Felony is going to be your more serious offenses. Those are the ones that you really don't want on your record. And that is going to be, there's Class A through D felonies. The same is true of misdemeanors, A, B, C. Within those, there's different statutory punishments and sentence lengths. So for a felony in general, you're looking at anything from a year and a day to life in prison. It is very important to kind of understand which one you're looking at, so you understand this is the amount of time that I could possibly serve if I'm convicted or if I plead guilty. And
during that whole process, you have the ability during the court process from start to finish to try and negotiate a deal with the district attorney's office or whoever the municipal prosecutor is to potentially police some of this stuff down too based on the facts. Is that fair?
That is fair. You have sometimes an entire year that the case may last to negotiate with the prosecutor, and a lot of that negotiation stage and the leeway that the prosecutor has with that is going to be based off your criminal history, other factors, if it was an arrest or incident that involved alcohol or drugs, have you done any rehabilitation? There's mitigating circumstances that may play into that, but they may dismiss the case outright, or they might, plea it down to a misdemeanor.
I know we're getting ready to go to break. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit about some of the changes that Ansley's seen in criminal law over the last 3 years since she was on the last time. We'll kind of unwrap that when we come back.
So we're going to unwrap changes in the law when we come back. We're just getting started. So much to get into as we talk about criminal law 101. But there's something you can do right now, too. If you have a question, you can call an attorney at Hollis, Wright. They are standing by to take your call at 1-844-LAW-TALK. You will reach an attorney. It is free. It's confidential. All you have to do is call, and they'll get those answers to you. So we're going to take a break. Stay with us. We'll be back with the attorneys right after this.
I'm Josh Wright with the law firm of Hollis Wright, a personal injury law firm, and thank you for watching The Attorneys. We hope you, a friend, or a loved one never needs legal counsel for a case. But if you do, the goal of the show is simple: to provide answers and legal counsel when you need it the most. Your call to the show is free and off air. So if you have questions specific to the show or related to other accident or injury topics, call, email, or text us. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, or go to hollis-wright.com and click on the Contact Us button. We know your time is valuable, so thank you for spending it with us and watching The Attorneys.
Front Porch Alabama is a first-of-its-kind website for shopping Alabama's boutiques, artists, and makers. We promote Shop Local on a statewide basis. We've discovered so many hidden gems in the retail world in Alabama, and we bring them to you right on your phone or your laptop.
State Traditions is an apparel company. As soon as I heard about the concept of Front Porch Alabama, I knew that that was something that we wanted to be a part of. And Front Porch Alabama allows us to reach customers that we would not reach otherwise.
Front Porch Alabama has such a wide variety of products from all across the state. I've got 2 girls that go to college, and I love picking out unique game day outfits for them. And if I find something that I love, I can just click and purchase right on my phone. It's super easy.
Start shopping at frontporchalabama.com today.
Hollis Wright has been handling workplace injury cases for years. If you've been injured on the job, give us a call. Our attorneys are standing by right now to give you a free consultation. And remember, at Hollis Wright, your result matters.
And we welcome you back to The Attorneys. So much to get into as we talk about criminal law 101. I want to also remind you that if you want to reach one of the attorneys at Hollis Wright, all you have to do is use that QR code on the television screen. Go ahead and scan that. You'll get that attorney. They'll talk to you, free and confidential call. As we were going to break, Josh, you wanted to get into some of the changes in law.
Yeah, and I know since you have been on last time, there have been some pretty significant changes in the way that the criminal process itself works, some legislative changes. Let's talk a little bit about that. What are some things that you've seen that have changed over the last several years?
So one of the biggest things that's going to apply to the most people is the expungement law changes. It was in 2021. Now, with the new expungement law, you can expunge felonies that were dismissed, misdemeanors that were dismissed, misdemeanors that were convictions, and also felony convictions.
Now that's a major change.
Major.
Because it used to be you pled or were not convicted of it and you could try and expunge it?
Right, so only misdemeanors that were dismissed, really that was the main thing you can expunge, but now you can expunge convictions. So if anybody out there has a misdemeanor, even if it's from 30 years ago, I help people all the time that have cases from 30, 20 years ago. If you were convicted or pled guilty to a misdemeanor, it's a petition that you file with circuit court, and unless you have a very long, lengthy criminal history, it's very likely that a judge will expunge that and keep it off your criminal record. For felony convictions, it's a little bit more difficult because you do have to get a pardon before you can expunge it. But it is great for people that are able to, or in the past have had a felony pardoned. Now they can apply for that expungement and the arrest will be erased.
And can we talk just for a second about the practical reasons why expungement matters? Because I kind of have an idea, but I bet someone sitting on the couch is saying, okay, well, I hear that I can get that removed from my record, but why is that significant?
So I would say that 99% of the people that call me to do an expungement, it's because they're applying for a new job or they're applying for nursing school, law school, any of that kind of stuff. Now, a lot of those things, they've reworded their application, so you might have to disclose anyway. But a lot of jobs in graduate schools, if you get that expungement, they're not going to see it on your record when you apply. So anyone that's shopping around for a new job and doesn't want that to come up on the background check, it would be wise to go ahead and get those charges expunged.
This is important. When you think about it, for someone just kind of sitting there that had a criminal conviction or pled guilty, and that's the only blemish on their record, and they think that it may be preventing them from getting jobs down the road.
That's why it's important that changes can be made from time to time. And so many notable cases and changes that have come up. Something that I covered in television was Anaya's law. Why don't you talk to us about what Aniah's Law is all about and how that impacts our viewers?
Yeah, so Aniah's Law was made statute recently. I think it was this past year. So it comes from a great place, the kidnapping of Aniah Blanchard in Auburn. Her mom really pushed the legislature to push this law through. What it does is it makes certain offenses, violent felony offenses usually, it statutorily says that a judge can not give bond to a defendant that is charged with those things. In the criminal defense world, that's difficult for us because if someone is charged with something, that doesn't always mean that they committed that crime. Sometimes someone's acting in self-defense. There are issues where, that person, it might be their first ever offense, and because of this new law, they're not able to get out on bond. The judges are holding big Aniah's Law hearings now on these issues, and the state will present witnesses, and the defense has a chance to present witnesses too. So that's just something new that's been impacting our area of the law.
Sounds like it's added an extra step for you as a criminal defense lawyer to hold one of these hearings to assess whether or not some of the characteristics are in play where it should not apply.
That is correct. It just puts a little more work on the beginning, which is fine because it makes you more prepared for your case down the road. But it's kind of like having a mini trial early on in the case, presenting some of the evidence, not just of the case, but also the character of your client.
Yeah. This is something, and I really don't know how to ask this question, but I know that there's sometimes people at home thinking about some of the things that I'm thinking about right now. And that's when you're an attorney, when you know that your client is guilty, and you still have to represent that client in court because that's your job. You're the defense attorney. How do you approach those cases?
Every single person has made a mistake in their life, and we don't need or deserve to be treated as who we were in that worst moment. Everyone deserves, a defense. It's in our Constitution. I ask my clients to be honest with me. If you did it, I want to know because it could come back and, bite us later on if I don't know it. Yeah. So it's important to me to know. And I think it's so important for us to, keep in mind that everyone is more than that thing that they did and serve as, a zealous advocate. That's our job. And I don't have a problem with that. I think that, people that do criminal defense, I do kind of see it as a calling.
Yeah, and I also kind of look at this because I know, this issue does come up a lot. We get asked this question a lot. And the reality is one of the many, many pillars of why this country is great is that we are focused on making sure that even people that committed crimes have an efficient and a fair process to go through. Mm-hmm. And someone's got to lead, guide, and direct them through it to make sure that they understand the repercussions, the circumstances, and the process that they have to go through to make sure that they get their same constitutional benefits that everybody else does, even the innocent. So I kind of get that. It's one of the pillars that I think makes the country great, that we still are going to defend people that we know have those issues. One of the questions that I had for you was related to DUI and Interlock. That's changed over the last several years. Kind of where does that stand?
So the biggest change recently was if you were involved in what's called a DUI diversion program. That means that sometimes on a first offense DUI, your attorney can work it out with a prosecutor to where you may be able to participate in a program. You drug test, take a couple classes, and then if you successfully complete the program, the DUI is dismissed. Previously, if you were in one of those programs, you had to have an Interlock ignition device on your car. You have to blow into that device and make sure that you don't have any alcohol in your bloodstream before you can actually start the car. So that used to be a requirement. Now, the statute that was in actually was set to expire recently, and the legislature decided not to continue it or renew it. So right now, if you're in a program, the judge has discretion as to whether or not you have one. And most of them are not imposing it because it's just kind of a pain to keep up with. It requires a lot of extra paperwork. If you have a DUI conviction or you plead guilty to a DUI, you can choose to have that interlock instead of having your license suspended. So a lot of people will do that. But other than that, it's not required in a diversion program.
Here's a perfect example why you need a lawyer in a circumstance like this to explain to you, hey, look, if you want to keep your license, you can do the following. We can make application of this. And I think that's just part of working your way through the process. I know we're getting ready to come to commercial break, but I want to talk about some trends when we come back.
Some trends when we come back. Defense Attorney Ansley Bennett right there, and we're going to take a break. I told you this was going to be a good one. We still have a lot more ahead. We're going to get some final thoughts. Stay with us. The Attorneys continues right after this.
I'm Josh Wright with the law firm of Hollis, Wright. As with any industry, it's important in the legal world to hire an attorney that is knowledgeable and has a track record of success. But with so many attorneys out there and so many different types of cases, how does someone decide the right lawyer to hire? In this week's Legal 4-in-1, we're answering the question, what should I consider in hiring an attorney? In-state versus out-of-state, big firm or little firm, recommendations from friends or family, the internet or TV. With so many choices and so much information, it can be an overwhelming task trying to make the right decision. To complicate things, choosing a lawyer is an important and sometimes life-affecting decision and should not be taken lightly. So how do you select an attorney? First, do your research. Look the firm up on the internet. Learn about the cases they handle and the results they get. Second, find out what clients are saying about the firm. Many websites provide client testimonials or have a star ranking system. Use those to your advantage. And finally, talk with a lawyer from their office and ask them questions. Questions about the volume of cases they handle. Do they return phone calls? Are you just a number or a client that gets the attention you deserve? Please remember, your call, email, or text to the attorneys is free. All of us at Hollis Wright want to help answer your questions on real issues you face. Remember, a competent lawyer will respond to every question you send in. That's our pledge and promise to you. Thanks for watching The Attorneys. We love this state and its great people. People that are worth fighting for in their lowest moments. It's what drives our lawyers to do what we do. We're here right now to fight for you. At Hollis Wright, your result matters.
I want to welcome you back to The Attorneys and remind you to follow Hollis Wright on all the social media platforms, on Facebook, on X, formerly known as Twitter, also on Instagram as well. We're talking Criminal Law 101, Ansley Bennett. And I just want to get right into this, Josh, if I can, because so often we've seen YouTube videos, people on television, an officer comes up to your car and then you start telling the officer what he can and what he cannot do. What's the truth there of what actually your rights are when an officer comes to the car?
Great question, by the way.
So you should politely refuse to let them search your car if they ask. You know, an officer can ask you biographical information. You should absolutely give that. There's no reason to not give them your license, etc. But when it comes to doing a search of your car, you have a right to not let them do that. But the key is that you treat them with respect during that interaction, because an officer often plays a part in your case. They can talk to the prosecutor and say, this guy was a real jerk, please don't give him a good deal. So you want to make sure that you're always kind and respectful when you're doing that.
Other part of that is getting out the car, though. When they ask you, step out of the car.
You do not have to do that.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know. Okay.
Now, if you are impaired, for example, do you have an obligation at that stage? I know this gets a little more complicated and there's a little more gray area, but like if they are arresting you for DUI, you know, and they tell you to get out of the car, I mean, obviously that probably changed things a little bit.
Yeah, so it's going to go into the probable cause that they have, and obviously there's going to be certain signs if you're drinking and driving. I would still not let them, you know, search your car, for example. But if they're trying to ask you to do field sobriety tests, you know, when you sign your driver's license waiver, or when you get your driver's license, you sign something that says you're going to do a breathalyzer. And that gets into certain punishments for DUI can be worse if you refuse a breathalyzer. So that gets really nuanced. But in general, I think the most important takeaway is that when you're having those interactions, you're not being a know-it-all or being rude.
Yeah. And do you think that that's where things go sideways, is the lack of respect? Maybe it can be both ways at times with police officer who's frustrated, had a bad day, or the individual who's being investigated for something, right? Is it respect? Do you think that's where it kind of goes sideways?
It does go sideways when you start bickering with the officer. And look, like you said, the officer can be a real jerk sometimes. Sometimes it's the driver that's being a real jerk. But as long as, you know, both parties are kind of treating each other respectfully, it's going to go smoothly. They're not going to try to mess up your case. They might even tell the prosecutor, you know what, he complied, he was great. Please let him do a DUI diversion program, for example.
It sounds like you almost want to think long term here. You want to think long play on who knows what's going to happen. I'm going to show respect because it could be to my advantage down the road.
And you know what, Josh, if you're really going to think in the long term, you should probably just take an Uber and not get into that situation in the first place.
Fair point. Hey, let's as we're on this topic, I know that marijuana usage, Delta 8, Delta 9, has become kind of a big issue. How does that play into what you do?
So Delta 8 is huge right now. They're selling it at gas stations, smoke shops. It is almost the exact same thing as your typical marijuana that you would think of that has psychoactive effects. The chemical makeup is a little bit different. It's not as potent as what we call Delta 9, which is, again, that standard marijuana. Delta 8 is legal right now. They are working on some legislation to change that, but right now it is legal. That's why you can buy it at these places. The biggest concern is that if you are on probation or you're doing a DUI diversion program, if you're having to drug test for a job, it does show up as marijuana. It is marijuana. It has THC, which is that psychoactive compound. So it will cause you to fail a drug test, and that's something that's really big right now. And if you're pulled over, a lot of people are being arrested for DUI, and it's the Delta 8 that they have and that they might have in their car because it comes in different types of compounds, just like typical marijuana.
And it sounds like as time changes, so does the law, and so maybe we'll see some changes in that area of the law too.
I think that's definitely going to be something that there's changes with the law soon.
Ansley Bennett, thank you for being on. You've done such a good job, and this has been really helpful.
Yeah.
Really helpful indeed. And we told you from the top of the show that this was going to be a really good one where you got all the information you need on criminal law from A to Z, everything in between. You got that and even more so. We also want to remind you that there's a QR code on your television set. We ask you to scan that QR code, and guess what? That will get you to one of the attorneys at Hollis Wright. They will answer your call. They will take that call. It will be free, and it will be confidential. All you have to do is reach out. Also, follow us on our social media channels, on X, on Facebook, and also on Instagram. We love you for joining us. Hope to see you back here again next week for another edition of The Attorneys, same place, same time.
Thanks for watching The Attorneys, sponsored by Hollis Wright.